Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of Inspire Career Spotlight on Careers, the video podcast series where I bring you experts from all over the career management space to keep you up to date and help you advance in your careers. And I'm really excited today to bring you my guest, Molly Kinkel. Hey, Molly.
Hey, how's it going, Kathy?
So we're here today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Molly, and then she's going to tell you a little bit about herself. And I'm really excited about our conversation today because I've never covered this before on my podcast. And it's one of those physician heal thyself things, like I need to hear her message. And I know that so many other people do. So we're going to go there. But anyway, Molly Kinkel is a marketing manager. She's been doing marketing for almost 20 years here in the Buffalo area. She is a Buffalo native as myself. So go Bills. We'll put in that plug too. And we had met. She also works at the AP Executive Staffing Office. And I spend a lot of time there. And that's where we really met. And we were having a great conversation one day about her ability to stay organized, keep on track, help keep the office on track. And when she threw out a buzzword to me, I knew I had to have her on the podcast. And she'll talk about her marketing, and she's starting a business. And when we talk about the business relative to technology, I think that's going to ring home. But the word she used with me, that's where I dropped the mic and said, you've got to come be my guest, is procrasti-planning. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how we tend to fall into the trap of over-planning and procrastinating, getting nothing done, spending all day getting organized, and then only to get trapped and lost into our own little webs. But I'm going to let her talk about it. She's the expert, and I'm here to listen and learn. So, Molly, let's start out, and please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I love that. You know, the first time I figured out the word or learned the word procrasti-planning, procrasti-learning, procrasti-cleaning, it so deeply resonated with me. I didn't realize there was a word for it. And it so perfectly defines what I personally was struggling with in my career and in my personal as well. I started my career, like you said, in digital advertising and marketing and built it, from the implementation side. And as my career grew, I shifted more into a manager and strategic side of marketing. And that's completely different than your day-to-day implementation, where it's very, early on in my career was very task heavy. And then later on in my career, it was that 30,000 foot view, bigger ideas, bigger strategy, longer runways to get things done. And that's when I realized my procrastination was a problem. Because if I didn't have a deadline due tomorrow, it didn't light that fire inside of me to get it done.
Well, I hope the people that are listening to that, I think we can all learn something from this, which is why I'm bringing it to my global audience. But specifically, I know young people watching this, you told me, young people that I work with, that they prefer to have that last minute deadline of, working all through the night to have something in by 8 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't ever one of those kind of folks, but I get putting things off until then. So this is just super important message. But so talk a little bit about kind of how you came from that marketing space, recognizing then how you had to make changes. Once you identified in yourself, take us through the journey a little bit, because I think we can all see ourselves in there. And then tell us how that formed into the idea that you had, that you really had to talk to people about this.
Absolutely. So I went from being a digital client service manager for Gannett Broadcasting. I oversaw 12 different markets, and it was the type of environment I worked out at Channel 2 News. Everything was due yesterday. So everything that I worked on had a sense of urgency, and whenever my phone rang, it was a fire that needed to be put out in that moment. So there was no time to procrastinate. And after being on the reactive side of my career, I really wanted to make a shift and be on the proactive side and move into strategy, which is when I accepted a position at Blue Cross Blue Shield. And health insurance moves much slower than Channel 2 News.
Yep, I worked there. Okay.
It was a huge shift for me. There was a lot of internal dialogue that I wasn't right for the job, and maybe this isn't for me. I'm not feeling as productive. And I was incredibly fortunate to have the manager that I had, and he still is a mentor. Meet up with him for coffee every quarter, but he really helped distinguish and exactly what my goals were and let me know I was doing my job. So one of the biggest things he recognized in me is If you give me a task, I will go in deep. I will spend hours. I will spend days. I will learn all the things. I will gather all the information. And he'll touch base with me and say, well, did you finish that task yet? And I'm like, oh, I'm still working on it. He's like, Molly, that was a 30-minute task. So it was the first time he gave me a tool of setting a timer. You basically create that sense of urgency by giving yourself a block of time. And ever since then, I work in time blocks. And I know that if I have, an hour and a half to do kind of a deep dive into something, 30 minutes to do a quick task, 10 minutes to follow up on something, setting the timer and having him, my manager, come over to me and say, hey, Molly, this is a 10-minute task. He would say that before he would even tell me what the task was. But if he wanted me to go in deep, he'd be like, this is a week, dive in, get the market research team involved, whomever, because sometimes the projects I was working on didn't come to fruition for 18 months. So it really needed to kind of create that sense of urgency within myself to keep myself on task. So take those really big items and chunk them down into little digestible tasks.
Molly, why is it your experience? And I know the people that you speak with and why we're talking, because you were so impressive in speaking with me initially about the causes of procrastination and then kind of how to get out of it. So I'm going to ask you kind of to set up the conversation is why do people procrastinate in the first place? Because we don't do it on purpose.
Yep. It's that internal dialogue. For everyone, it's a little bit different. So I can only speak to my own experience, but I am definitely a recovering perfectionist. I have this little voice in my head that it's not enough. It's not good enough. Keep trying. I have also grown up with a mentality of like, it's all or nothing. So I'm either going 100% in or I am completely procrastinating, withdrawing, and self-sabotaging. So there's always something within you that's stopping you from taking that task. And we often make things feel a lot bigger than they have to be. And I still get stuck in it, Kathy. I notice the dialogue going on in my head and I'm trying to make things perfect. And I try to get it perfectly organized and do the entire, setup of whatever project I'm working on, do all the background research, do all the procrasti-learning, do all the procrasti-planning, rather than just taking that big action.
Oh, so now that you say procrasti-learning, at first I wasn't even sure what that was, but now I think I've just identified that means tell me if I'm wrong, but that means when you're going into a project and you're like, well, I need to learn everything I can about it before I even work on it.
Right. And that's a part of us that feels like we don't know enough.
This sounds suspiciously like imposter syndrome in many ways, like it's an element of it.
Absolutely.
Right? And while I do know for a fact that men and women probably equally do procrastinate when they need to do things, a lot of the background behaviors as to why, at least we can speak to women, do it, is for those reasons of feeling that we're not enough and feeling that we have to continue to do it. Then I think there's a whole other element of time management too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a huge part of imposter syndrome. And I know, I thought that I had these parts of me kind of figured out, when I was in those strategy positions, management positions. I am now making the shift from corporate life, where there's a lot of structure, to entrepreneurship, where there isn't. And all of those old things that I struggled with are coming back up. And there's a sense of frustration that comes up when you feel like, I've beat this before. I know what to do. Why am I doing it again? It's like any of us, when we get into that self-sabotaging and we don't think we have the skill set to do what we actually know how to do. I've got 20 plus years experience building my career. Those skill sets are transferable. But, you start thinking to yourself, well, I don't have the right, credibility, and what do I need to learn and what certifications do I need? And all of a sudden, I can definitely say from my own experience, I just finished my certification and I put so much weight on that certification. Like I wasn't allowed to talk about it until I wasn't allowed to, and looking back on it, I wish I've been talking about this business for the last 3 months, so it's feeling the fear and doing it anyway and recognizing that procrastinating, it's holding you back. And once you actually take that little action, that big action, honestly, the fear just melts away.
Right, because you can see them that you can do it and you overcome that. I think the challenge always is then you said this a minute ago, we tend to repeat it then. So we think we've learned, and then the next situation comes along. I sense there's a feeling of comfort in that too by not taking the action, because if you don't take an action, you can't fail.
Absolutely. It's self-sabotage. But in that moment, you're prohibiting yourself from even trying. I can't help but quote Wayne Gretzky because I'm a lifelong hockey player. But you miss 100% of the goals the shots you don't take, right? Sorry, Wayne, I probably screwed up that quote. But basically, yeah, and you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So why not? And chunk them up into smaller bite-sized chews where it feels good. And I think it's when it comes to organization and procrasti-planning or procrastination in general, I think it's really important to have a conversation with yourself, sit down, step one, and just understand what your patterns are. Be honest with yourself. No one's here to judge you. This is only going to set you up for success in the future. I recognize now when I slip down that slippery slope. And the sooner you can recognize those patterns and you found a structure of organization that works for you, then you can always fall back on it. Like, I know that I am a list maker extraordinaire. Lists only get you so far. Yeah, so you just got all this
I'm
sticky
bringing
notes.
all my lists in right now. I got them all over here, and I can't reach the other ones. I got lists everywhere, Molly. I hear that.
Lists everywhere. And they're good to a point. But for me personally, as a perfectionist, an all or nothing mentality, that list gets really long and then overwhelm sets in and then I shut down. So I've shifted. I'm like, okay, let's be realistic. Let's take a look at my calendar. So the week before, the Sunday before my week begins, I sit down for what I learned there was a really cool course that I took, but she calls it power planning, like a power hour. And in that power hour, you take a look at your week. And in that week, you're realistic about the time that you have and actually put your list on your calendar. That was such a game changer for me because now rather than seeing a list of, 50 uncompleted tasks, I would look at my calendar and be like, okay, what are my commitments for the week that I can't move? Those are the commitments to myself, whether it be the gym, dinner plans with friends, doctor's appointments, meetings, whatever. Those are your commitments. And then after the commitments are in your calendar, look at the needle movers. And I say needle movers because there are a lot of people, including myself, that loves to do busy work.
Ouch. I could see me in that, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Love to do busy work because it feels good, right? And you know what? Sometimes I don't want to discredit busy work because there is value to that work that I'm doing. It needs to be done. And sometimes the days that I don't have as good a motivation, I like to use the snowball effect. Like I'll knock some of the easy ones off right at the beginning of the day. That way I'm gaining momentum and a little bit more confidence towards the end of my day. Because I don't always have it in me to, the saying, do the worst the first. Like sometimes I don't have it in me. I just don't. So I think it's something about sitting with yourself, knowing yourself and knowing what you're capable of doing. And after I look at my calendar and I've gone through my commitments, now it's time to put on your calendar your needle movers. These are the things that are actually moving you in the direction of your goals. After the needle movers are there, I like to look at what this woman calls clean rest. And I will credit her. Her name is Sam Laura Brown. She has a great course on perfectionism. And I just love learning from her. I've taken quite a few of her tips and tricks. But she also puts on her calendar clean rest. And what she means by clean rest is resting without guilt. So a lot of us are in that I will rest when, I will rest if, and then we feel like we need to somehow earn it rather than it being a genuinely good part of our day that we don't need to earn. Our body needs to rest. We need that human to human connection. We need to go out with our friends and family. We need to go move our bodies, go for a walk, be in nature, whatever. But we so often fill up our entire calendars of all of the important stuff. And then the stuff that gets kicked to the end is like, you don't go to the gym, you didn't go to the grocery store, You didn't do those things that actually are setting you up for success for tomorrow.
Well, you say this, and as like I just have this continuous loop in my head, that I think about the job seekers that I work with and how they get caught in this. And when you talk about procrasti-planning and procrasti-learning, I think about people in job search that spend so much time scrolling through LinkedIn, looking at jobs, picking out connections to talk to, but nobody pulls the trigger. They spend all day looking, thinking that they're doing something great. Well, I'm looking for jobs.
Yeah.
Well, I've already told you that probably you're not going to find the job online, probably, but at some point you might. So it should be a piece of your job search, but the tiniest piece, and instead it becomes 95% of their job search.
Yeah.
And they can spend Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday before they even apply for a job, or maybe it's the whole week they don't even reach out to talk to anybody in their network because they're so busy perfecting that message and not sure if that's the right person, and then getting caught in that loop of repeating it.
Absolutely. So that goes back to being honest with yourself and recognizing your patterns, because I've done that. I've scrolled all day long job searching and found myself in weird areas. I'm like, oh, that's a cool job. Has nothing to do with what I'm looking for or what I want to do. So it's really important, whether you are looking for a job or currently in your career, sitting down, even if it's 5 minutes, be intentional, write it down. What are you looking for? What are the qualities? What's the intention? Whenever I do research, rather than just diving in and going down a rabbit hole, I write down the questions I'm looking to answer. That way you're always held accountable and you can pull yourself back. And you can scroll all day long looking for a job, but the truth is the feedback comes in taking the action. You will never get any feedback unless you take action.
Sounds like at a very simplistic level too, it's going to the grocery store and making a list so that you don't fill your cart up with stuff that just looks shiny or looks fresh or that smells good and you really didn't need it anyway. And before you know it, you've blown your budget. It's the same thing. It's all areas of our life, and we all do that. And when I coach my job seekers, we talk about setting up a plan and trying to prioritize the most, what do you call those, needle movers? The needle mover activities, which are talking to people, which are networking, which are asking people for recommendations and having those conversations. But they are a bit more uncomfortable, which is why people don't like them, because you have to be vulnerable. You have to put yourself out there. People may say no. People may ignore you. You may not get the job.
Right.
And then what happens, Molly, tell me where this fits in, is then that produces anxiety. And then it starts that other wave of, well, now I'm just too frazzled to do it, right? I mean, and it's this play that keeps just going on and on.
Right? Absolutely. And it feeds into itself. And then those voices in your head that were that imposter syndrome before just keep getting louder because now you're reaffirming those beliefs.
Yeah.
But in those situations, I think before I apply for a job, before I send an email, before I complete a project, before I go to the grocery store, if I can be intentional about how I show up, I can release any expectation of their opinion of me or how it's going to be received. Because at the end of the day, I can only control my actions and what I put into the world. I can't control how it's being received. You can write the perfect email and the perfect resume and the perfect cover letter, and you build up the courage and you hit send, and it's not received well. They just send you a generic, sorry, we're not interested, right? Whatever their generic response may be. It took me a long time to see those as little blessings.
How so? Why are they little blessings?
Because every rejection is protection. And if I showed up as me, I didn't try to be something I'm not. I didn't try to fluff up my resume. I didn't try to, I spoke to my strengths. I shared why that company felt aligned with me. If they don't feel the same way, it's like dating. If they don't feel the same way, you're like, thank you. If not this, then something better is going to come along.
And Molly, thank you for saying that, because As a coach, I believe that 100%, but it is hard when people are in the trenches and they get one rejection after another. Now listen, that doesn't mean, folks, that you don't have to be well prepared. It doesn't mean that you don't have to dress for the part. It doesn't mean you don't practice your interview answers. All of these things you do, but even after you do that, you show up as your best self, you still come in second, come in third.
Right.
Right. And when I hear from people a lot to say, well, I've come in second 4 times, 5 times. My reaction, I have 2 thoughts on that. And my first one is, you're getting close.
Yeah, for
You're
sure.
getting really, really close now. But by the same token, it's so hard because job search is so uncomfortable. People want it to be over. And it's so easy to turn the light on ourselves to say, well, I screwed it up. I must not be good enough. I can't compete at that level, or whatever people tell themselves.
Yep.
When in reality, you're just so close, and that's when you can't quit.
Yeah, it's so true. And it doesn't mean that those emails don't sting. When I got those rejection emails, they sting.
Yeah.
They still hurt. And I allow myself the time to feel it. I'm like, okay, today's not going to be a great day. Today's not my best. I didn't get that thing I put my energy into. The project didn't go the way I wanted to. I skipped my workout this morning, whatever. That doesn't mean that you sabotage the rest of the week moving forward. So it's like letting yourself feel cruddy in that moment and just being like, I did my best. They're not the right fit. And use it as feedback. Is there any little tweaks you can make, for the next one? I look back at any big project I've completed for whatever company I was working for. I always love doing the, once the project comes to an end, to sit down and do kind of the post-mortem review.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, what worked? What didn't work? And then use that feedback to move into the next project to make it a little bit better. There were some things that I look at I did in my career a decade ago that just make me laugh. But you just you live and you learn. It's you got to try. And if you sit down with a plan and you be intentional about what you want and why you want it, I am in full belief that you'll get there.
One of the exercises that I go through with my clients is we do an exercise called negotiables, non-negotiables, where I ask people to write down what's negotiable for them in the next job and what's not negotiable. So, everybody starts with salary and benefits and remote versus hybrid, and that's all good. That's fine. But I always tell people, dig way deeper than that. Because to your point, if you're not intentional about what you want and you don't know what you want, how can you get it? How can you ask for it? How can you shoot for it? And I'm talking about things like the way that you want to feel every day at work, the relationship you want with your boss, with your peers, with the people that report to you. What do you feel like on Sunday afternoons? Are you excited about what Monday holds? Are you looking forward to the week ahead, or do you have that pit in the bottom of your stomach? Right? That's those Sunday scaries that, people call it. Or do you want a job where you really just kind of phone it in and you get to go home quickly every night? Not a judgment if that's what you want, as long as you do the job right. If that fits your lifestyle, maybe you have small kids and all you really want to do is just come in and out and it's just something that works with your lifestyle, beautiful. Other people say, I need room for advancement. I want to travel. I want to meet directly with the clients. But how can you ask good questions in an interview to see if that's really what's going to happen once you get there? And a lot of it, too, is really about seeking out what you want. And then you can really focus on the right company. You can focus on the right level of position. You can ask those really powerful questions instead of just taking people's leftovers. The last thing I want people to do is to get into a job and say, oh my God, this is not the job I signed up for.
Oh, yeah.
And isn't that the risk?
Absolutely. And I have found myself in the wrong job before. It happens. And, the job had checked a couple boxes that I felt were kind of high on my non-negotiable list. And, I was really sold into the company. It felt like, it was this new and upcoming, there was this part of me that it felt excited about. Once I got in there, Kathy, I was like, wow, this is not for me. It's the unfortunate truth. I'd like to say that, you prepare the best you can. I'll ask all the best questions, really get, like you said, sink into that feeling. How do you want to feel? I think that's so key, Kathy, is that so many people have their list, but it is all of those, what are the benefits? Can I get my kids on the bus? Important thing. But ultimately, like, I know at this stage in my career, I need to feel connected to the company in a deeper way. When I was fresh out of college, I just put my head down and got shit done. I just wanted my foot in the door. I just wanted experience. I never felt like I needed, I wasn't particularly excited about health insurance, working at Blue Cross Blue Shield, but I know enough about myself now to know that I need to feel more deeply connected. But that's something I found out about myself, so sitting with it and figuring what that structure is. I mean, that's all organization is figuring out what the guardrails are so you can play in between. That's it.
So it's not taking away your freedom to anybody that sits there and goes, well, you know what? I'm one of those people who I don't need an organized desk because I know where everything is. No, it's not taking away your freedom, right? It's to allow you to have the barriers or the bumper pads if you're bowling or whatever it is that keeps you on track. But organization is meant to allow you to show up as the best of yourself. It's not trying to take away your freedoms.
Absolutely. It's giving you the structure. It's allowing yourself, because you know what? Every day is not going to be your best day. There's some days I'm very motivated. There's some days I'm not. But if I have the structure and the organization in place, I've already removed half of my excuses. Like, Kathy, I'm sure your desk looks a lot different than my desk. You probably operate I have one giant long list. You've got sticky notes everywhere. We operate differently. So, I can sit here and give people all of my recommendations for how to be organized. This is what I have tried and has worked for me. And I've made many little edits over the last decade plus.
Well, let's just talk something else because I know we're running out of time here, but I want to cover something with you. We talked earlier when I introduced you about, maybe we didn't, so forgive me, but I wanted to cover this with you because you mentioned your certification and tech addiction, technology addiction, right? And we hear about this a lot with young people, but I don't think it really knows barriers. We like to say it's the kids, but it doesn't. And I know that people are getting stuck with that, which is holding up on their job search. It may be impacting their performance on the job.
Absolutely.
What recommendations do you have for people that know that they get caught in that web? Let's maybe, there is a major addiction in some people, but I think at the very least, we all have this, we need this dopamine hit and we're coming in for it. But how do you recommend people try to manage themselves out of it to take care of what they need to take care of? And then certainly if it's a larger problem, they need to get professional help.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, tech addiction doesn't choose by generation. It's, the iPhone came out in 2007 when I started my career. So what I thought, digital advertising and marketing, I was going to be at the cusp of, thought it was so cool. And it is cool. I am not against technology, but it's using it as a tool in our life to support what we need to live, to have better communication, to get our job done, to, research that next great trip we're going to go on, whatever. Technology is an incredible thing. You can literally Google anything right now. But unfortunately, the other side of that is the addiction piece, right? Just like any other addiction, it's a numbing agent. It's taking you away from what you need to do to be successful in your life. So if you're reaching for your phone rather than doing that hard thing, rather than, that you're putting off, it's just another form of procrasti-planning or procrastinating in general, right? Like, I know those long scrolls on my phone are not giving me any value. So it's whether you know that you need to have your phone in the other room when you do work. That's what I do. I put my phone, I literally leave it in my car, or it's in a drawer in my bedroom. And when it's out of sight, out of mind, I cannot tell you the level of focus that comes in. It's pretty incredible. At first, just like any addiction, and I know people are scared of the word addiction, but we're all addicted to something, truthfully. We're all using something to numb us, to not have to deal with what's happening in the present moment. So deciding just like we were talking about before, step one, awareness. How are you using your phone today? Take a look at your screen time. Have an honest conversation with yourself. Is it prohibiting you from getting your work done, or is it helping you? And then from there, decide to have a different relationship to it, whether that is time blocking it and putting it on your calendar like you do your other things. Maybe that's part of your clean rest. Maybe that's like, you know what? I love scrolling on Instagram. Maybe that's you. Maybe that you feel connected to your friends. You're inspired by whatever influencers you're following. Schedule it on your calendar, just like you would anything else. And give yourself that 15, 20, 30 minutes, whatever you see is appropriate for you, because it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. But at least start there and just start with just recognizing your behavior and how it's impacting your personal and your professional life. And if this conversation is making you a little uncomfortable and you're scared to go look at your screen time, you probably are a little addicted to your phone. And there is not many adults, I can't even say that about my 73-year-old father. Like, I find him scrolling, so it's not a generational thing. We
But
can't.
Molly, it's designed to be that way, isn't it? I mean, we don't have to get into outright. I
Yeah,
know
it's
folks think
designed to be that way.
you're not looking for a lecture, but the reality is that's how it's set up.
That's how it's set up. It's truthfully. So me and my digital advertising career, we track screen time, frequency, how much they're coming back. We are behaviorally, contextually, and content targeting to get our message in front of the right person at the right time. That's what marketing is. It's attracting your customers. And it's essential for any business to succeed, right? Like, sales and marketing is just part of life. But I think people need to be aware of how they're being targeted and how these apps are being built to be addictive. So that endless scroll is designed to be addictive. It's that like constant hit that you can't pull yourself out of. The same way video games never seem to end. As soon as one character dies, you just like new life, and you're playing a video game again. You just can keep playing it over and over again. There's no start and end. And that's probably one of the biggest things. Like, when I'm a big advocate for like watching a movie rather than just endlessly watching something on Netflix. I pick a movie because there's a start time and there's an end time. And then I go on with my day or go to bed, whatever I'm doing. So I'd like people to apply that to their tech usage, whether it's the TV, their cell phone, their computers, their iPads, video gaming. Really have an honest conversation with yourself and take a look at how it's affecting you, your personal and professional relationship. And then just start with just making tiny tweaks. Start editing it down, putting a little time cap on it, because going cold turkey is really hard. And honestly, it's a sad statement, but it's true. There's actually tech addiction rehabs popping up all over the country where people need 4 to 6 weeks of true detox, the same way any other addict would work through a program. So start now, do what you can, and try to make a different choice.
No, I think that's perfect. We're going to leave it there, because I think if we're talking about job seekers and career management and trying to reach your goals, all these things prevent us from doing it. Not that there isn't a place for that in our lives, but
Right.
I can speak to, I get same thing. I do it. We're all doing it at some level, and there's room for improvement for all of it.
Yep.
Except when it comes to this podcast, of course, because you guys keep scrolling
Hey,
all day.
listen, tech is a good thing, right? It's like I said, it's an opportunity to connect. I've struggled with this, honestly, Kathy. When I first started deciding to build this business and go through my tech addiction and digital health certification, was really out of it was because I had spent so long building my career in digital advertising. Like, I have seen firsthand how these applications are built. And I think there's value to them, but I also don't want it to consume somebody's life. I want people to have the authority to choose how they interact with the tech in their lives and be intentional about when they pick up their phone or when they go to use an app or when they go to do research. They're being intentional about the program that they use and the time that they're doing it.
Perfect. All right.
Yeah.
Molly Kinkel, thank you so much for sharing
Thank
your
you.
information and your knowledge and expertise with us, pulling back the curtain a little bit on the the digital advertising and the marketing piece is just fascinating. I could do this all day, but thank you so very much, Molly. Listen, everybody, Molly, we're going to drop her information here. If you have questions, you can reach out to her directly, or if you have concerns or you want to talk to her, maybe about coming into your school and talking to your students, could be great. In the meantime, please don't forget to click our bell here to subscribe for when you are in need of great career information. We'd love to have you in our audience and getting the information. So thank you all, and until we meet again, live inspired.